Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. In this video we will discuss some ways you can get the most out of the data that's currently available to help in the planning for the 2019-2020 campaign. This will have a specific focus on premium attacks and good fixtures. Also draw on some of the information we have available in the members area of Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Joe and today I'm joined by David. David, welcome.
Hi Joe, yeah, good to be back doing, well, actually, the same video we did the other day. We had a few issues, as I'm sure people saw. The stream went out fine, but then when YouTube tried to turn it into an actual video, it seemed to mess it all up, and we figured, let's just do it again. So here we are again.
Yeah, we're hoping it was a one-off issue, but this will be a good test to see if there is another issue. But yeah, let's plough on. Let's start with some of those premium attacks, vital for captaincy and also all-round points. In theory, you should be able to field these players week in, week out for strong returns. First up, let's have a look at the Manchester City attack. Now, I'm just going to go through the fixtures and then I'm going to get your opinion about some of their assets and, of course, some of their key assets up front, with Aguero and V Sterling, KDB v Bernardo Silver, lots to talk about. Man City's fixtures, they start away to West Ham, great. Gets slightly tricky at home to Tottenham, and then lovely sea of blue. They're away to Bournemouth, at home to Brighton, that's a good fixture, away to Norwich, and at home to Watford. So, what do you think of the Man City assets, David? What do we think about them, and what's the data saying?
Well, I think a lot of people currently are sort of weighing up whether or not they want to go for Aguero or Sterling, which makes total sense. They're two great fantasy assets from last season, both priced the same amount as well. So I mean, I think a lot of people are basically looking at the situation and thinking, well, I can only have one of those. I mean, if you try to have both Aguero and Sterling and Salah, then the rest of your team's going to be pretty imbalanced. So yeah. One of these two, I think, is quite important to own. Obviously, we've got on the screen at the moment is the heat maps. So I know this is an area that people will often look at, and it kind of generally ties in with what people saw of the two players from last season. We're seeing Aguero in a more central location. We're seeing Sterling predominantly on the flanks, but with still, considerable amount of activity inside the penalty box. Now, obviously, in the members area, there's more than just the heat maps, so we can go even deeper than that as well. And what I've actually done is I've done a comparison of the two players just in the last 10 game weeks of the season, because I got the impression from watching the games that Aguero's kind of goal threat was dropping a little bit towards the end of the season, and Sterling's was actually going up. So if we look at the last 10 game weeks of last season, we can actually see that basically penalty box touches per match, Aguero was on 6.6. Whereas Sterling was on 8.8. So that's 2.2 touches in the box per game more from Sterling than from Aguero. Now, Aguero historically has shot a lot more, so because he's a centre forward, it's his job, there's no surprise there. So in that period, 3.4 shots on goal, 2.6 of those in the box per game for Aguero. Sterling is behind him on those, 3.1 shots and 2.4 of those in the box. But this is the crucial thing for me, is that not only was Sterling more accurate, his chances were of a higher quality as well. So in that period, you've got Aguero with 1.1 shot on target per game, but Sterling 1.3, so marginally better there. But when it came to big chances, it's a huge gap. You've got 0.2 big chances per game for Aguero, but 0.7 per game for Sterling, which is a big gap. And so for me, if I'm comparing these two players, and we're seeing that Sterling towards the end of last season, I do often think that trends set at the end of one season tend to kind of resurface at the start of the next one. Then what it's telling me is that Sterling has the better goal threat, and generally speaking, he's kind of a more creative player as well, because he's a winger by trade. Very good at playing balls into the box as well. So I think all round potential, Sterling has a greater potential, and because they're the same price, that's why he's the more obvious candidate for me. If he was more expensive than Aguero, then maybe I'd consider Aguero over him. But they're the same price, so if Sterling's offering more, and let's not forget, as a midfielder as well, he's going to get more points for those goals, 5 points instead of 4. And of course, Man City very good at the back towards the end of last season as well. They ended up being better than Liverpool in the last 10 game weeks for defence. Sterling's going to get those clean sheet bonuses, and it is only just 1 point, but it is still just 1 point that Aguero is not going to get a hold of. So comparing those two players, if I had to choose one of those two players, it would be Sterling for me.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I've had a look at here's more stats, so bombarding people with stats here. I've had a look at expected goals. Aguero is XG, expected goal, 1 every 2 games. That's a very fine expected goal number there. But Sterling is just short of that. Sterling is expected to make an assist every 5 games, but Aguero every 10 games. So factoring in that extra point, as you mentioned there, for a goal, and also clean sheet points as well. So you just at 1 clean sheet point, but it all adds up. I think you're right. Sterling could be the one. Bonus is almost the same as well, but Aguero relies on goals. Sterling's baseline bonus, and that is more than double Aguero's. And basically, baseline bonus is without goals, assists, or clean sheets. So it's basically things like what you do on the pitch apart from those things. So it's things like tackling bonus, passing, creating chances, all those types of things. Sterling is a better option than Aguero for those ones as well. But of course, Aguero's got all those goals as well. Will Sterling play more? We think so. How about Bernardo Silver and KDB? Now, what are your views about these two? Possibly instead of Sterling and Aguero, possibly as an add-on to one of those as well. What do you think of those two?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of people considering De Bruyne and Bernardo, and it's quite funny because we already mentioned that we're redoing this video. When we talked about De Bruyne the other day, the reaction sort of on social media or on site was a lot of people going, I wish you hadn't mentioned De Bruyne because it's a really compelling case. In terms of, so I mean, you mentioned there, can we add him on to a Sterling or an Aguero? I think frustratingly, probably not. So, I mean, I've been trying to fiddle with what I've got in my team. And I mean, a lot of it depends on who your non-negotiables are. So, for example, right now, Salah's going nowhere for me. That's a big chunk on my budget. Vardy's going nowhere for me, which kind of rules me out of sort of some other sort of slightly, the cheaper premiums elsewhere. It kind of, it means basically, really, if I want De Bruyne, I'm going to have to take Sterling out. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. So this is the thing, is that some people might be scared about not having Sterling and having De Bruyne. But, if De Bruyne last season, it obviously was quite a disruptive year for him, but he still posted some quite impressive figures. Because obviously, he played fewer minutes, but we can always just look at minutes per certain actions and see that, if he were to play for longer, how he would, compare with Sterling. So, if we do that, against the whole Man City squad, no Man City player averaged better minutes per key pass than De Bruyne last season. He had 1 every 27 minutes, which is crazy. I mean, that's. We know this anyway. We know De Bruyne is a world-class creator, if not one of the best creative players in the world. So we shouldn't be too surprised. But it's just a case of, even in the season where he was ravaged by injury, he was still, when fit, creating a lot of chances. And then his minutes per big chance created was 1 every 88 minutes. I mean, that's 1 a game. And a lot of these creators, sometimes it's just under 1, but for him, every 88 minutes, that's at least 1 a game. And compare that with the rest of the squad as well. So if he's creating a big chance every 88.7 minutes, you've got Mahrez every 148 minutes, you've got Silva, as in David Silva, every 150 minutes, Sané every 160. So no one is even close. And so Sterling is every 231 minutes. So if you're looking for assist potential, De Bruyne is so far ahead of Sterling, it's crazy. And then when you look at goal threat as well, this is the thing that sort of scares me the most, is that actually De Bruyne had a better minutes per shot than Sterling last season as well. He had a shot every 31.5 minutes, Sterling every 36.1. That's not a huge gap, but either way, it just goes to show that De Bruyne still has that goal threat. Now, it is a different type of goal threat. We do have to just clarify that. Sterling, as we've sort of already discussed, very much a penalty box player. So every 45.5 minutes, he had a shot in the box, whereas De Bruyne had a shot in the box every 97 minutes. Most of his shots are coming from range. But, De Bruyne still had a shot on target every 81 minutes, Sterling every 73 minutes. So again, not too far off in that department as well. So even when De Bruyne is shooting from range, it is on target. And I'm sure we can all remember plenty of times when he's had a pop from range and scored a worldie. So De Bruyne does look like a fantastic option. And really, what it all boils down to, I think the crucial point why we should seriously be considering him is that price difference with Sterling. It's huge. Sterling's 12 million, De Bruyne is 9.5. I can't remember the last time he was this cheap and this amazing. I think it's probably the cheapest he's been since he's been, Man City's chief creative player. You can save so much money there, and potentially could match Sterling. Perhaps maybe, to be honest, it might come down to what type of fantasy manager you are. We discussed this quite a lot. Myself and yourself, Joe, we consider ourselves dullards, the type of managers that like a creative player involved in the set pieces who's going to tick along. Sterling's more explosive, it'll be a 21 one week and then maybe a 3 the next, and then an 18 and then a 5 the next. Whereas De Bruyne strikes me as the type of player and was posting figures that could be, 6 and 7s every week. So maybe it boils down to that. But as I said, that money you can save, it's really, really appealing to go with De Bruyne instead of Sterling.
It is. And we said before we came on air, I always know when a good point has been made in a video when I start thinking about my team and I think, oh no, hang on a minute. Maybe that guy's got a point, and you're that guy, and you've got a point there with De Bruyne, and I am seriously considering him. I played the Sky game as well. I'm very considering him, extremely considering him in that one as well. I just wanted to add a few more figures to that. So Bernardo Silver versus KDB. So let's have a look at those. So we know that KDB could potentially challenge Sterling there, but what about Bernardo Silva? So Silva's created 2.2 chances per start, and he had 2 shots per start. KDB, De Bruyne, has created 3.2 chances per start and 2.8 shots every start, which completely backs up what you were saying with those figures earlier about minutes. So in theory, KDB is worth more money. All of those figures there that myself and yourself have garnered, all from the members area as well. So those should be definitely have a look at that there. I think we should move on now to Liverpool's attack. So we'll have a look at their fixtures and then we'll get your opinion about some of them. So let's have a look. Right, Liverpool. Norwich at home to start. Great fixture. Then Southampton away. And then Arsenal at home. Burnley away. Newcastle at home. Chelsea away. There's some really good fixtures there. The key draws are Salah and Mane. What do we think? What's your opinion on those two? And could perhaps Firmino challenge them?
Yeah, I think this is actually an easier decision. So we talked about we're a bit concerned about how we're going to cover the Man City attack, but Liverpool I think is a lot easier this year, and then really that just boils down to Mane's price rise. So he's gone up by 2 million, and Salah, despite being the top goal scorer and the top point scorer again, has gone down to 12.5, which is just crazy. I think that Salah's price is a discount. We've all been given, a lot of people moaned that all the prices are too high, but we were sat with an incredible discount on Salah. Because towards the end of last season, he was 13.3. I think he was 13.6 at his peak. So you could even argue this is kind of like a 1 million discount on Salah, whereas Mane obviously has been hiked up. So you've got a difference of 1 million between Salah and Mane, which, as I said, for me just makes it easy. Last season it was difficult because Mane could offer you a bit like Sterling and De Bruyne this season, a big healthy gap of about 3.5 million. But there's a lot of differences between the two players. So Mane, yes, shared the golden boot with Salah, but that only really is the tip of the iceberg. So he scored 18 goals at home, which means he only got 4 away from home. So, he was a kind of player who only really scored at Anfield. And that was good if you had him and you wanted to captain him, but you can only really do it in a home game. He didn't get any assists at Anfield either. So really all he was doing at Anfield was scoring goals, which, maybe sounds a bit too negative because obviously it was. But, Salah, by contrast, he was offering assists at home. He was offering goals away from home. He's on penalties as well. And we think that maybe Milner's probably not going to play as much this year. So for those 3 things, to have those added on to what Mane already offers for an extra 1 million instead of 3 million, for me, it's a no-brainer. I'd happily pay extra 1 million for assists at home, goals away from home, and penalties. For me, it's an obvious one. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, no, we're in agreement. I feel like it's one of those kind of David Cameron, Nick Clegg kind of things where I agree with Nick, I agree with David here, but I do because we're both looking at very similar figures. We're both coming to very similar conclusions. I waver with Sterling sometimes, but I never waver from Salah, and that's due to pricing, and it's mainly due to Mane's pricing. So there isn't really that much competition. So Sterling's got the much cheaper KDB. And Salah used to have the much cheaper Mane, but Mane has had a price hike this season. So that issue is not there. Let's have a look. A shot every 34 minutes. So we've got some figures up on the screen. A shot every 34 minutes for Salah in the box. That is incredible. Plus, we can assume that Milner may play less because he's a year older, and giving Salah penalties much more often. And shots on target are strong too. So I just want to say minutes per goal attempt in the box. Salah 34 minutes. So repeat that again. Mane 42 minutes, which is still good, but not as good as Salah, and because we haven't got that huge price difference anymore, it's Salah for me. There's another name I want to throw into the mix, Kane, Harry Kane. Is it worth considering the Spurs attack with Kane? Sterling or Aguero, and one of Salah and Mane is so Sterling or Aguero is doable. But what if you want Kane as well? Who's going to go for the sacrifice? I'm going to quickly look at Tottenham's fixtures, and then we'll get your opinion about Harry Kane, where he could fit in. Aston Villa at home, first fixture, that's good. Man City away, that gets bad. Newcastle at home, that's fantastic. Arsenal away, that's pretty good actually for Harry Kane. Crystal Palace at home, and then Leicester away. We know that Spurs have a good record scoring against Leicester. So, what do you think about Harry Kane? Can he fit in at all? And what do we think of him?
Yeah, it's frustrating because I really want to have Harry Kane, but whether or not he fits in, that is the crucial question. So, we're already agreed that Salah's just a no-brainer. We've mentioned a few times, and we might talk about it in a different video or perhaps in some other content that we do, that we both quite like. Vardy, for example. We want at least one Man City attacker. Could be Sterling, could be De Bruyne, but either way, these are all premium players at different ends of the spectrum, of course, but they're all premium players. And a lot of these players who we sort of more confident of, either because of their fixtures or because of form from the end of last season, or a bit of both. It's really hard to put Kane into that, even with the drop in price. Now, I think that he's going to offer better value than he did last season. I think, last season, we didn't really see the real Harry Kane. I mean, he was disrupted by a lot of things. He came back late from the World Cup, and we thought, the sensible decision would be for him to not start until game week 3 or 4. But we all know what Harry Kane's like. He just cannot accept not starting matches if he is not injured. So he just flogged himself. He was absolutely knackered. He played too much football. Which, I mean, I get that. I mean, I like playing football, and I'm not even a professional, so I do get that. But this summer he's had a rest. He's not coming back late from anything. Obviously, we had the Nations League, but it's not really the same level of commitment as a World Cup. So I think that he's going to be ready to get back to his best this season, and there's plenty of data to support that as well. So I mean. The fixtures long term look really nice. So between now and I think game week 18, so that's roughly Christmas time, the only team that basically Spurs only play one team at home who finished in the top half last season, and that's Chelsea. So some really nice home fixtures. What's putting people off a little bit is the start to the campaign, and the away fixtures especially, because Tottenham have, in the first 4 game weeks, got to go away to Man City and away to Arsenal. Now you mentioned there the good record that he has at Arsenal. I'd echo that as well. The Man City game, I think, is what was putting people off. But generally speaking, it's like if you're creating your squad now, the early fixtures do put you off. And we both discussed before, maybe Kane's the type of player that we'll wait and see. It's August after all, and you never know with Kane in August. Maybe put him in on the wild card. But I do actually think that we could be sat when we get doing our wild card around game week 5 or 6. That both yourself and myself will be looking at Kane and what he's done in the first 4 game weeks and gone, I actually need to get him in now, and I actually think he could start the season really well. So the home fixtures, I don't really think we need to go into too much detail about why they're appealing. The away fixtures, like I say, concerning some people, but with Kane, last season away matches were really good for him. So actually last season, no FPL asset in any position registered more attacking returns than Kane in away matches. They had a total of 15. So away matches actually quite good for him, as I said. And then so when we look at those first 9 away matches that he's got at the start of this season, which do start with Man City and then Arsenal, to be fair, but we look at those 9 matches and we used a flat track bully feature to basically see how he did in away matches against those opponents last season. He was only involved in 7 matches against those 9 teams, but in those 7 matches, he's involved in 8, 7 starts, 1 sub appearance, 6 goals, 2 assists. That's 8 goal involvements in 8 games against the first 9 opponents he's got away from home this season. So when you sort of pull all that together, I do think that he can start this season really well and be a differential, because people are going to get put off by the fixtures that he's got and the fact that you kind of can't really have him and some of the other players we've talked about, like a Salah and a Sterling. If people want to go down a different route, because there's always someone who wants to say, I'm going to go without Salah this year, I'm going to spread the cash. Kane is the perfect one to do it, because when people are put off and the player still has potential, then that's the opportunity for you to have an incredible start with a player that not many people own.
Yeah, I mean, my first draft had Kane. My current draft doesn't have Kane. I can, like you, I can see myself having Kane at some point. 11 million. It's a price that can't be ignored, I think. A shot in the box every 34 minutes. That's the same as Salah. So we've been talking about how wonderful Salah is. Well, Kane's matching him for shots in the box. And you've said that he's someone that can be relied on away as well. Worse than Aguero, though. A shot every 26 or 27 minutes. 26.9 is the exact figure, minutes per goal attempt in the box. And that's really good. That's phenomenal, really. And so Kane's below that, but as we said, he matches Salah as well, so he does throw it in. FPL, Fantasy Premier League, have been really cunning, as they always are, with their pricing, and they've created a problem, a dilemma, and that's what they do at the start. They create dilemmas. Oh, if I have so-and-so, I can't have so-and-so, and it goes on like that. Harry Kane is very, very tempting as well, and we know he has the pedigree for it, and he scored last August as well, so we can forget that August hoodoo. And there's also all sorts of theories around Kane. You know, he performed better with so-and-so and not with so-and-so, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more new theories this season, but for the moment, he's a really good striker. He's 11 million. He's tempting. Let's move on before I just start moving Harry Kane in and moving my team around. Let's turn to Everton. Now, Everton are a team with outstanding fixtures starting off. Crystal Palace away, Watford at home, Aston Villa away, Wolves at home, Bournemouth away, Sheffield United at home. There's a fantastic sea of blue there. Lots of options as well, and they've lots. I suppose in comparison to premium options we've been talking about, very kindly priced. What do you think about the Everton options early on?
Yeah, I mean, I think Everton's got to be the team that we're all talking about. They're very much the team that's on the tip of everyone's tongue right now. And as you said, I think the key obviously is the price. I mean, obviously a lot of people are looking to defence as well. I think, obviously they did very well offensively towards the end of last season, but we were all hugely impressed and surprised and shocked, to be honest, that a Marco Silva team kept 8 clean sheets in the last 11 matches of the season and against decent opposition as well. You know, they kept Liverpool out in that 0-0 draw. They beat Man United for 0. They beat Chelsea for 0. You know, they won some big games at home. So, yeah, plenty of reason to look at them all across the park. One particular area that I've been embroiled in the last couple of weeks since the game launch is Digne versus Coleman. I know that I've been the subject of much criticism for daring to suggest that we look beyond Luca Digne, who I'm not saying is a bad asset, but Coleman is someone I think that could potentially match him. And what we've been discussing just now about the sort of the premium options that we've got and who we can and can't have, and there's a lot of players are more expensive than we want them to be. Saving 0.5 where you can is hugely important. And I would advise that you do it if you can find an asset who actually isn't as much of a step down as you think. Now, there will, I'm sure, be people even now watching this video going, but David, Digne's on the set pieces at Everton. Why would I pull away from that? Well, obviously those set pieces are important. And then, like I said, I'm not saying Digne's not going to do well. We just have to consider what Coleman is actually capable of from open play. Because he's not involved in the set pieces, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have threat in other areas. So, interestingly, in all of the Premier League matches played in 2019 from last season, so that's from game week 21 to game week 38, Coleman outscored Digne by 85 points to 84. Now, some people will turn around and say, but there was an unlucky own goal and a red card from Digne. I understand that, but Coleman did miss 5 games.
Yeah.
So, actually means that Coleman's points per match was 6.5. And Digne's was 4.9. That's a huge, huge difference. And we weren't bothered by that last season because Coleman was worth more than Digne. But then when you flip it round, and now that Coleman is cheaper than Digne, when you look at value across that period, so that's basically just dividing the total points that they got divided by their price, and you get your points per million spent. 14 for Digne, but 15.5 for Coleman, which is, in my opinion, like quite exciting. And then, of course, when you look at the underlying statistics as well, so the question here is that run of form that Coleman was putting on, is it sustainable? Again, I think so, yes. Now, when you look at the creativity, admittedly, Digne is creating more chances across this quite big period. He's creating 1.9 chances per game. Of course, that is heavily linked to the fact that he's taking these set pieces. But if you look at the quality of the chances, Coleman's ahead in that department, because sometimes when you're taking the free kicks and the corners, you're just lumping a ball into the box and then Michael Keane's heading over the bar. That's not quite the same thing as Coleman getting into a strong position and playing a decent ball into a forward player. So big chances created over this period. 0.2 per game for Digne, 0.4 per game for Coleman. So it's a cheaper player offering a faster rate of quality chances being created, which is, for me, that alone is worth pulling him down to say 0.5 million.
I just wanted to add with that with Coleman, because what you've pointed out there is a really important point when people are looking at the data, and I see this all the time. People use entire season data all the time. They say, "Oh, look at compare these two players like Luca Digne and Coleman." Luca Digne over the season was a better player, but you've got to remember Coleman was only relatively recently injured as well, and he took a long time to get going. And as you said, in 2019, we were starting to see a bit more of the Coleman that we know so well. This is an age-old debate as well with Luca Digne and Coleman. I remember sitting here with Mark years ago, and we were debating Baines versus Coleman. So it's just we just replaced Baines with someone else, and perhaps maybe it'll go on for eternity. We'll constantly be looking at the fullbacks of Everton. But I just wanted to say it was a really interesting point, because when people are in the members area and they're looking at data, there is the options to have a game week range. For example, you can look at game weeks 1 to 19 or 20 to 38, or whatever you want to do. And it's worth having a look at some of those as well as whole season stats. And sometimes, as you said, it can give you a bit more of a detailed picture. And what you provided us there really does show that Coleman is worth that money as well. And I do, if I have the money, I might go with Luca Digne, but Coleman is very tempting. If you are 0.5 short, then Coleman is a very fine substitute indeed.
I just want to echo your thoughts there on about game week ranges. I think that's hugely important when you're doing this research, and you have to tailor it to what you know already about a certain team. So just to give people another example, because I know a lot of people are looking at Jimenez versus Jota. And to be honest, it's kind of it's a similar debate. You get some people go, well, across the whole season, Jimenez was the better option. But you have to remember that from, I think it was game week 15, 16, around that time, Nuno changed his formation from 3-4-3 to 3-5-2, and he hasn't gone back since. So really, if you want to compare those two players, you have to compare them when the manager was playing 3-5-2, which means you have to go for a bespoke game week range, and you can't compare them across the course of the season. So definitely want to echo that. There's plenty of examples where people, you need to tailor your research to more than just the whole season. So
definitely, and that goes for Leicester assets as well. I know we're talking about Everton here, but of course Leicester changed manager last season as well. So with the change of manager, you get a bit more of a clearer picture of what Leicester are about, and under the previous management, maybe not as well. I just want to mention some of the other statistics. Sigurdsson, Richarlison. So they are top of they're the shot guys basically, as we knew really. So which one of those to go for? Sigurdsson has had 86 goal attempts last season, Richarlison 83. Not much between them at all. Chances created though, Sigurdsson 73, Richarlison 21. So you're getting a clearer kind of spread of points there as well. Calvert Lewin, or whoever they have as their striker, could be a good option there. Calvert Lewin had 52 goal attempts, but only 19 starts as well, so that's not bad. His finishing has been questionable, so if they get a good striker there, or Calvert Lewin's finishing gets better, the likes of the fullbacks that we've been talking about, Sigurdsson, could be great assets as well. I mean, what's your overall picture of Sigurdsson and Richarlison? Are you considering them, or are we overlooking Richarlison? Is Sigurdsson just the default option at 8 million?
Well, I mean, I think we're back in the classic debate, aren't we, of explosive player versus someone that the dullard quite likes. It's a tough one for me. I mean, I've said a few times before that I find this bracket really hard to factor in when I'm building my teams, because if I'm putting in your Salahs and your Sterlings and a few other expensive players, we haven't really even mentioned on this video the fact that if we want a Liverpool defender, we're probably going to be paying 7 million. If we want Laporte, paying 6.5. So money is hard to come by, and it means that my third and fourth midfielder, getting them to be as expensive as 8 million is really hard to do without really kind of leaving myself short in other areas. And as I mentioned before, a player in this bracket, when there's not too many options here, if they don't work out, moving on to someone else is quite hard. I think that 8 million is a bit of a no man's land in the midfield bracket. So I personally not that interested in either of these two players. I'm kind of looking more at Calvert Lewin at the moment, just from value. And I can see from the stats that he doesn't really compare too well with them. But I'm kind of hoping that if these fixtures are decent, maybe he can get involved in some returns. I might not necessarily go with Calvert Lewin, but it's hard for me to get too excited about these players because they don't really fit my structure. But I can understand the appeal. Sigurdsson obviously involved in set pieces, but we have to remember he is sharing them with Digne, so it's not like a complete control. Penalties are obviously something that people are going to talk about a lot because we've got VAR coming, but obviously VAR doesn't necessarily mean more penalties, and even if it does mean more penalties, Sigurdsson isn't really that good at them. So he's missed a fair few of his last few penalties, either for club and for country. So there's that. Richarlison, he starts the season very well, but obviously he's coming back late. He's done well at the Copa America, so there's that. But he's coming back late. Is he going to be tired? He's also the type of player I don't really like to trust, mainly because I don't trust him as an individual. He's the kind of player who I feel like could get sent off at any moment's notice. So there's reasons, of course, to consider these players. I understand why that people are looking at them, but for me, if I think you sort of have this general approach to players sometimes as well, Joe. If there's enough to make me concerned, then I'll probably leave them. And so with both of these players, there is enough to make me a bit concerned. So at the moment, not really considering them.
Yeah, I like the structure I've got at the moment. In later videos we'll come more to our game week 1 setups, but I like the 8 million category in my setup because I can downgrade it. Because I'm always looking for an exit, and as you said, I always look at these the pitfalls of certain players. And if I went for Sigurdsson's in there currently, say if I went for Richarlison, so same price, I can easily move down to one of those attractively priced Leicester midfielders, for example, as well. And there could be an emerging, say 5.5 million midfielder that may emerge that we don't know yet, but something for future videos. Just before we go, I just wanted to say across the summer we're planning more videos and podcasts as we gear up for game week 1. Pre-season, budget players and much more will be covered. Thanks so much for those that are watching on the live stream, and thanks so much for those who are listening or watching the recorded version as well. We are also planning another video today, which is Thursday. We're planning a pre-season video, so we're going to have a look at some of the pre-season issues there. Thanks so much for joining us, and David, thanks so much for that great information, and especially for tempting me with KDB. David, thank you.
Cheers, and to you as well, Jay.